As we get ready for the NFL draft, which rookies are skyrocketing up our dynasty rankings? Quick reminder, if you haven't already, check us out on flockfantasy.com/endgame. You get access to our mock drafts, which we do live multiple times every week, all off season long. You want to get in before everybody else, that's where to find it. Also, bonus articles, videos, live streams, and access to our private Discord channels and those dynasty rankings that you want to know about. Get them right there. Use promo code ENDGAME and you get 30% off any subscription. 2-day free trial. Check it out, flockfantasy.com/endgame. All right, Chris, let's get into it. Who's the first rookie that is making a big impact on you before the draft?
You know, I wasn't super high on Josh Downs coming out of college necessarily. I mean, I liked him, but I didn't really like him. But the more I look into him, the more I really like him. Now, he's definitely on the smaller side here. At 170 pounds, 5'9", mostly played out of the slot, more of a flanker role. And I'm hearing a lot right now, people are complaining about these wide receivers who only played a slot role or only played a flanker role. Like, they're not true X receivers. They're not these big receivers. As if those guys can't be successful in today's NFL. Like Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb. These are guys who primarily play that slot flanker role, and we love these guys. They're awesome, and I think Josh Downs is one of these guys. He fits the bill perfectly. And one of the reasons why I really like him, even though he's a smaller guy, is he plays bigger than he really is. And here you can see from Matt Harmon's reception perception, who breaks down every wide receiver, watches all their tape, he had the best contested catch rate of any wide receiver in this class, any of them. 93.8% contested catch rate. So even though he's only 170 pounds, he's strong and he can make those contested catches. And speaking of reception perception, when you look at his reception perception profile, he's probably the second best route runner behind Jackson Smith and Jigba. You can see here, he is above average in almost all of his routes. He can run the vertical routes. He can run those slot routes. He's not a guy who, like a Juju Smith-Schuster, who can only run those slot routes and nothing else. He can run a pretty good route tree, which means you don't have to only line him up in the slot. You can use him in that flanker role, like I said, and he can hit those big plays and those vertical routes. And then finally, when you look at his numbers, you just see a guy who is massively productive for a team who wasn't very good offensively, didn't have good quarterback play, and the other team knew they were throwing it to him because they didn't have any other weapons. And he went over 100 yards in 6 of his games here. He had 5 or more catches in all but one game. He scored 11 touchdowns. He was productive in a system that wasn't really great for wide receivers, and the defenses knew he was the only option. I think he's going to be a great player in that slot flanker role. If he winds up on a team where that role is wide open, he can absolutely smash this year.
Yeah, and you said it. The one thing that stands out to me about Downs is with Sam Howell gone and a lot of those pieces from that North Carolina offense from the year before in the NFL, he didn't take a step back at all. In fact, was even better. Now I'll talk about a receiver that is getting a little bit of helium now heading into the NFL draft, but I think people may be underestimating exactly how good he will be in the NFL, especially in fantasy. And speaking of Matt Harmon, guy that we definitely trust as far as his analytics, he said that other than Jackson Smith and Jigba, this is the only other receiver he sees could be a true number one alpha receiver. That's Zay Flowers. Now, that might sound odd because you don't think of him as that type of guy because not an X, like you said, not a big receiver at all, not a guy who necessarily dominated. He had some big numbers, of course. He's getting a lot of traction, but he's not that prototypical alpha receiver. But I think his production could lead to that. One thing we know about Flowers is he is a crisp route runner. He's someone who just knows how to get open. So no, not 4.2, 4.3 speed. But he's plenty fast enough, faster than Jordan Addison. No, not big like Quentin Johnson, not a guy who's going to make an impact in terms of getting as many contested catches as a Josh Downs or a Quentin Johnson, or somebody who's going to outsize or outmuscle the other cornerbacks. But he will be open, so he doesn't need to do that. He knows how to get open, and he has good run after catch ability, and he will turn on the jets when he needs to. Very productive despite playing at a very lackluster offensive situation there in college. He was dominant in terms of his target share. And he could do that again because he's going to go to a wide receiver needy team early in the draft. First round is almost a given. If he winds up going to a team that needs a receiver like Green Bay, a team that, let's face it, the Vikings need a number 2 receiver to take some pressure off Justin Jefferson, or don't count out the Ravens. I know they got Odell Beckham. I mean, come on, that's a 1-year deal. They need help beyond that. They're going to try to keep Lamar Jackson there. Don't assume they're not drafting a receiver early because they need someone who is a long-term solution, not a 1-year fix. All right, now I know there's a certain running back that you're high on, so let's tell the people exactly why.
Yeah, if you're new here, you may not have realized how high I am on this guy, but if you've been watching us for a while, you hear me talk about him all the time. That's Israel Abanikanda out of Pitt. Look, a lot of people love these fast guys like Devin Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs, but this is a fast guy who's actually big. 216 pounds, even weighed bigger at his pro day, 217 pounds. But what you really gotta like is his athletic testing. He ran an unofficial 4.41. He then ran an unofficial 4.34. Now, granted, those are hand-timed, but those are still extremely fast numbers, especially for a 216-pound guy. Remember, Breece Hall ran a 4.39 last year, and people lost their minds. So this is a big guy running, close to what Achane and Jahmyr Gibbs are running. But what I really like, and what you don't see in this chart here because it's not listed, 41-inch vertical, most of any running back that tested at the combine or that really is tested this year, and a 10.8 broad jump, also number 1 among all running backs. You can fake a hand-timed 40. You can, start the timer a little late, stop it a little early. You can't fake a vertical jump or a broad jump. Those numbers are there. You either did it or you didn't. And that's a better sign of explosiveness and burst than the 40 anyways. And then if you want to talk college production, how about a guy who averaged 6 yards per carry, scored 20 touchdowns, went for over 100 yards in 9 of his 11 games, had a 320-yard game. Now, granted, he didn't catch as many passes as we'd like to see. It's never going to be a huge part of his game. He's not going to be a 50, 60 catch guy, but he's got better hands. And we've seen with guys like Kenneth Walker, who don't catch a ton of passes in college, are adequate pass catchers in the pro game. He'll be an adequate pass catcher at the NFL level. Now, I will say one thing about him. He's not going to be the kind of guy who's picking up 4 or 5 yards every time he touches the ball. He's going to have a lot of runs for 0 yards, 1 yard, negative yards. But then he's going to hit a home run for 40 yards and a touchdown, and nobody is going to care because he's the type of guy that if the hole is there, he's got the vision to see it, and he's got the ability to explode through it. And look, in fantasy, who cares about the guys that consistently pick up positive yards? I'd rather have the guy that can rip off a 40-yard touchdown run at any moment because that scores way more fantasy points. So, he's not up there like my number 2 running back like a lot of people think. He's probably around running back 5 for me right now. But considering he's not on many people's radar, I would say that is skyrocketing.
Definitely agree. Guys, not getting enough publicity at all. And I'm not going to worry too much about landing spot with him because I think he'll make an impact no matter where he goes. And now I guarantee that dynasty owners will be way lower on this guy than actual NFL GMs because there's plenty of people out there who play dynasty and the only stat they care about is age, right? The younger the guy, the better. Guy's over 26, 27, he's washed up, I don't want him. I mean, look, youth is important. I get that. But I'll tell you what, my dynasty championship teams aren't the ones that have the lowest average age on the roster. It's the ones that have the best players who actually produce. So let's talk about a guy who might be over the hill before he even gets into the league. That's Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. Now, here's the thing. We know it might kind of be a redshirt year for him as well, which is obviously a big knock on him because recovering from ACL surgery, we don't know when he'll be ready. And even so, playing quarterback, doubt that he's going to just step in and be a starter whenever that does happen. But here's the thing. Dynasty is still a long game. You want a guy who can step in at least next year, if not this year. And quarterback is a position you don't want to have to be shuffling pieces back and forth each year anyways. You want a guy who could be that franchise signal caller. Hooker actually might be that, and I'm not the only one who's saying that. He has been climbing up draft charts because apparently his pre-draft interviews with GMs have blown them away. They say this guy has everything it takes to be a leader. He's somebody that they see potential franchise quarterback in. His numbers, I mean, he basically would have had the Heisman wrapped up had he not gotten injured. That's how good that Tennessee offense was rolling last year. If you look at all the current mocks heading up to the NFL draft, nearly all of them now have him as a first-round pick. And I'll tell you that one, not saying it's necessarily the most trusted source, but Mike Tannenbaum of ESPN says that Hendon Hooker could go as high as number 5 overall to the Seahawks. I'm not necessarily buying that, but I'll tell you that's how highly he is thought of now. He has the measurables, he has everything that you would want. Don't give up on this guy just because you look at the only thing, and that's his age. Those rookies are climbing up our rankings, but who is falling down pre-draft? Check it out right here and we'll tell you.